Hey there, everybody. I am joined once again by Andy. Don't worry, he
Right.
has not been disappeared from the videos. We are going to do a hidden base. This is a deck that comes up a whole bunch. So this is the Premier to Death Star 2 format. This is an X-Wing hidden base, and we built in a little sideboard of cards to maybe include. But this is a fun deck to run. This is a classic deck to run. It's also kind of an annoying deck to play against, I think. So, Andy, do you kind of want to walk us through hidden base and the starting package and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So if this deck looks familiar, this is basically a modified version of, well, one card modified from the sample deck, which is popularized by Johnny Chu, one of the all-time great Star Wars CCG players. And the only card that was modified from it was the original deck list has 2 copies of Endor, because when you played this, when it was actually Premier Death Star 2 era, you had to have your hidden base indicator as part of your 60 card deck. Now it just gets put into your like extra cards basically, and you don't have to. So you gained a card back. So you didn't really need 2 copies of Endor. So I cut one and put in a hyper escape here. But otherwise, this is the, basically the best version of this deck, which is hidden base X-Wings. So, hard to argue with greatness and the results that this deck has had with Johnny Chu, but I'm just going to kind of quickly go over it. Here you start with hidden base, which is an objective from special edition. Deploy Rendezvous Point. Place a system with a parsec number from 1 to 8 from outside of your deck face down on your side of table. It's not in play. That card indicates the planet where your hidden base is located. While this side up, you can deploy 1 system from your reserve deck. Opponent loses no more than 1 force from each of your force strains at systems and sectors. And once you've deployed 5 battleground systems, and one of those 5 battleground systems is your hidden base, you can flip this card. While it's flipped, whenever your opponent wants to draw a card from their force pile, they first have to spend 1 force. And then for each battle system you control up to 2, you can cancel a force strain anywhere on the table. You cannot deploy any more systems. And then at each system opponent occupies during either deploy phase, they can probe. They take a card from their hand, place it face down under the system. If it's your hidden base, you place your objective out of play. If it's not your hidden base, then nothing happens. Once they do probe your hidden base, all the cards that they used as probe cards go back into their used pile in any order. So basically the point of this deck is you're going to start with hidden base. Like I said in the kind of brief intro, the hidden base indicator was a 2nd copy of Endor back when Johnny Chu actually played. Now you can play any system so long as it's one of the ones in your deck. So you have access to Corulag, Endor, Kessel, Sullust, and Yavin 4 as your hidden base. So you can change it in between games if you want. But you choose one of those systems, you place it under your objective, that's your hidden base. Once per turn, you're going to pull out a battleground. So you're going to pull out a system. And then usually once you have all 5 out, you'll probably flip your objective. There might be some corner cases where you wait a turn or 2 to flip the objective. But basically your systems are set so that you will get a lot of value out of both the parsec number where they're located, but also like on movement and stuff. So this first system that you really want to probably pull out is Endor. One, because if there's no Imperials on Endor, it's a force strain -1 for them, which if there's no Endor sites, there can't be Imperials on Endor. So it's going to be a force strain -1 most of the time. It's force strain -1 for you as well. But to move your starships to here from Sullust, Rendezvous Point, or Haven, which you can play on Yavin 4, requires -1 force. So it basically lets you move for free to Endor. And then your starships deploy -2 to Rendezvous Point and are hyperspeed +2 when moving to or from there. So it makes all your X-Wings deploy for free to Rendezvous Point, and then they get hyperspeed 7 when they move from there, so they can easily make the jump from Rendezvous Point to Endor. So you can deploy them all for free and then move them to Endor. The other systems you have, because you can move for free to here from Sullust, Rendezvous Point, or Haven, you play Sullust. So to move a starship between here and Death Star 2 system, it orbits or Mon Calamari requires -1 force. It also makes your opponent's starships deploy plus there. So just another way for you to be able to move between Endor and Sullust. Your other systems are Yavin 4. You have Yavin 4 because you do play a copy of the card Haven, which you can play on Rendezvous Point, Yavin 4, or Sullust in this deck. And then your starships deploy -2 and pilots deploy -1 here. So like if you put it on Sullust or you put it on Yavin 4, similar to how Rendezvous Point, all your X-Wings deploy for free, and then you can move to Endor if you need to. When battling here, you can add 1 battle destiny and opponent effect canceled if opponent controls that location. So that's an easy pick for Yavin 4 as one of your other systems. And then you have Corulag, which is just a great system all around. It's basically blank text for you. Like you don't have any non-unique rebels, but if your opponent, if they control, it's 4 strain -1. So it's like a system you don't really have to defend, but it gives you 2 force and then 1 force. And then your last system is Kessel, which is one of the best light side locations in the game because it's a drain 3 location. Now, you can only drain for 1 while you're on the front side of this. So Kessel may be one of the last systems you pull out just because it gives your opponent 2 force. But once you do flip, you want to be able to hold Kessel. And when you're looking at your parsecs, you know, Kessel is at parsec 8, Endor's at parsec 8, Sullust is at parsec 7, and then Yavin 4 and Corulag are at parsec 4. So everything's at the like high end of the parsec range. So it's easy for your ships to really move around, which is very nice. And then you have parsec 4s because everything else is, you know, parsec 8. So if like your opponent plays a Star Destroyer or you know, like something like that, they usually only have hyperspeed of 3. So like you can sometimes run away if you need to, and they might take 2 turns to catch up with you, in which case you can just constantly evade them if you can move to a parsec 4 from a parsec 8 and they can't. So yeah, you basically get those out and then you play a bunch of X-Wings. But as far as your starting stuff goes, you have a heading for the medical frigate. So you're going to deploy 3 effects. Each of them deploys for free and is always immune to alter. Premiere through Death Star 2, you really need to worry about, you don't really have a way to interact with Hunt Down or Court. So Visage or Court pings are really going to hurt you, which is why you want to get Honor of the Jedi out, but you can't start Honor of the Jedi. So you start your Insight serves you well, and then you'll be able to lose this to go get Honor of the Jedi. So one of your starting effects is going to be in Insight so that you can get Honor of the Jedi on turn 1. And then you play Wise Advice and Do or Do Not. So Sense Alter really hurts this deck because there's a lot of interrupts that you want to make sure it goes through, like Organized Attack and All Wings Report In and Power Pivot and such. So you play Heavy Sack Control, Do or Do Not, Wise Advice, and then you play your Insight to pitch to go get Honor of the Jedi. Other than that, like I said, you just play a bunch of X-Wings out. And you drain in space for, you know, 6 or 7 each turn. If your opponent ever tries to come fight you, I don't recommend that you do, but if they do try to come fight you, you have S-Foils, which is an effect, deploys on table. Once during each of your control phases, you can use 1 force until the beginning of your next turn. Each of your X-Wings and B-Wings is power +2 and hyperspeed 0, so you can't move, but it adds 1 and add 1 to each of their weapon destiny draws. So it makes your X-Wings each power 5, and then you combine it with a card Organized Attack, which you're going to use as a used interrupt. It's a used 5, which is really nice. So it says, if a battle is just initiated, each of your X-Wings and Y-Wings present is power +1 and immune to attrition for the remainder of turn. So now you have a bunch of basically deploy 0 or deploy free X-Wings because they're deploying to Haven or Rendezvous Point and then moving. So I guess the movement is 1. So for 1 force, you can play and move an X-Wing to any of your locations, and during battles, they'll basically be power 6 and immune to attrition, which is like Darth Vader level stats. So they're incredibly good. And then you just have like a suite of good space cards. Because you have so many cards that have ability, Civil Disorder is very good. Deploy an opponent's side of table. They have to deploy a card with ability each turn, otherwise they lose 2 force. So against like a hunt down deck, a bring them before me deck, even like scum and villainy decks, it can be kind of hard to constantly put out a character. You know, if your characters are like the Emperor, Vader, Janice, Simalu, Marajade, and like Boba Fett, and that's it. You know, you can't just continuously put out characters, so you're just going to lose to do or do not. You have Legendary Starfighter. So if an opponent just lost a starship, you can deploy it on your participating starfighter. During each of their move phases, opponent loses 1 force, loses 2 if it's Falcon or Red 5, and that starfighter is also power +2. You do have a Falcon in Lando and Millennium Falcon. So you can try to put it on Legendary Starfighter on the Falcon, but most of the time it just ends up on an X-Wing, and it's an extra point of damage each turn. You have Order to Engage, which this is one of the most annoying cards to deal with, because you might stack like 3 or 4 X-Wings at a system, and you're going to be power, 24 in a battle, right? Your opponent doesn't want to fight that, so they're going to like not battle and move, and then they lose 2 force to Order to Engage. And then on your turn, you're just going to play like, a bunch more X-Wings down and then battle them and kill them. And they're always going to be on that run from you for the most part, because you're just going to be so much more powerful than them. You do have to time your S-foils correctly when you use Order to Engage, but you just threaten so much power against any dark side space that like they're probably going to be running most of the time, running away from you. So Order to Engage is always going to kick in and hit them for 2. Rebel Fleet, you can put a non-unique starfighter on here to cancel a force strain. So you can, between your objective canceling 2 force strains, Rebel Fleet canceling force strains, and then we haven't really touched on characters, but you have Boushh and TK421, which are Undercover Han and Leia. They can cancel force strains. And then you have Projection of a Skywalker, which you can deploy on any planet site, and opponent's force strains are -1 here. You basically don't have to interact with ground at all. You're going to be canceling, sometimes upwards of 7 force strains a turn, which there's not many dark decks that are going to be on 7 different locations draining you, but you can conceivably cancel up to that many per turn. You have 1 grabber because you are starting Wise Advice, and there are some really annoying cards that you have to deal with, especially if you're playing against TIE fighters. You want to grab all powered weapons, but just like a bunch of just really annoying things like Force Lightning, so that your opponent can't just sit there and cycle it with Janice or whatever it is that you want to grab. You have 1 grabber. On the interrupts, you have All Wings Report In, which lets you, the second half of it, the or statement, take 1 non-unique starfighter into hand from reserve deck, so it goes and gets you an X-Wing. At some point, when you have a bunch of X-Wings out, you can once per game target 1 non-unique starfighter on table, draw Destiny. If Destiny is less than X, retrieve X-Force, where X equals the number of copies of that starfighter. So if you have, 7 X-Wings out, you can draw Destiny and retrieve, 7 Force. Just make sure you have enough to pay for secret plans or satisfy Khmer Big Coward. You have 1, it could be worse, just in case if you need to, you're going to lose some force somewhere to a force drain that you couldn't cover, or, limited resources or something. It could be worse. 4 copies of Organized Attack, 2 copies of Rebel Barrier. That works very well with Order to Engage. They play somebody, you barrier it, they can't battle, they lose 2 force. You play 5 X-Wings and outpower them by quite a bit the next turn. You have 3 copies of the Signal because you have so many effects in this deck. You're only starting 3, and you have, an additional, 10 other effects that you want. Especially you want to be able to get Haven and Rebel Fleet up and running, as well as S-foils, and like every one of your effects you really want to get at some point. So you have 3 copies of the Signal to go get them. And then you have a copy of Power Pivot. Power Pivot is a card that if you have a piloted starship armed with a starship weapon in battle, you can lose 1 force to reduce the power of an opponent's starship to 0. Or place a hit starship at lost. Your X-Wing cannons, they can only target starfighters, so they can't target capital ships, but they're a weapon. So if they come at you with a piloted executor with 4 pilots on it, you can just power pivot and make it 0, and then you're probably going to be power 24 or 30 or 40 or something in a battle, and that's just going to be the end of the game. So power pivot's like an end of game card. You just play it and you're probably going to win the game that turn. So you don't really need 1. You have 2 X-Wing laser cannons because you can shoot so cards that are annoying against you. Dengar and Punishing One, he cancels immunity to attrition, which he'll always cancel the immunity to attrition from organized attack. Zuckuss and Mist Hunter, Boba Fett and Slave One, Baron Fell in Saber One, Major Meanda in Scythe One. Any of those kind of starfighters that are going to really be annoying to deal with. Either they're good bounty hunters and ships or good with like a weapon, like a TIE cannon or something. They can be problematic for you if they just start shooting all your X-Wings out of the sky. So, you do want to be able to use your X-Wing cannons to fire at them. You can spend up to 3 to make it immediately lost, and then you get an additional 1 off of your S-foils. So your destiny is +4 to hit them, which, should be pretty easy. You have a ton of 5s. You've got all wings and organized attack and the Signal and random projection of Skywalkers and stuff. So kind of like late game, you're just going to be like drawing 5s like crazy with this deck. Your starship packages, you've got Red Leader and Red One. He makes S-foils immune to attrition because he's immune if Red Leader's on table. He's also an X-Wing with a permanent pilot that works with all your X-Wing stuff. You've got whatever this is, 12 or 14 X-Wings, 1 Lando and Falcon. And I subbed in 1 Hyper Escape for the extra copy of Endor that was in the original Johnny Chu list because it works with Order to Engage. If they battle you, if they're on 2 systems, they battle you, you hyper escape to another system. Your X-Wings already participated in a battle, so they can't battle you again, and then they lose 2 to Order to Engage. It also gets you out of jam and lets you spread out a little bit, go wide. The only other cards in here that we need to talk about is your Admiral's Order. So each starfighter that fires a weapon in battle is power +3 for the remainder of battle. So you do have your X-Wing cannons. And once per turn, you can cancel and redraw your starship weapon destiny just drawn. So if you do happen to, randomly draw your TK-422 because you couldn't, deploy them and you're going to miss, you can redraw and then maybe draw your Signal or something. And then it does some stuff at sites, which really never comes up. But okay, it just does some stuff with starship weapons, which is really nice. And then you have, your 2 undercover spies, and you have an EPP Luke and an EPP Obi to kind of get you out of a jam if you need to on the ground. The other thing it can do is you can float 1 copy of Forest, which is a diamond site. It goes, except for Kessel, you can play it to your other 4 systems, and your characters present here are immune to attrition. So you can just, against like a hunt down deck, they've put Vader down to Cloud City or something. You can just play your Forest to Sullust and put Obi-Wan there and flip them back. And then now they have to lose to battle to Visage of the Emperor, but it also satisfies battle order because you have a fully immune Obi-Wan with a lightsaber, and you're probably drawing a 5 for your battle destiny. So unless they're coming at you with a bunch of walkers, like it's going to be kind of hard to beat that Obi-Wan. And so you can then satisfy battle order, because that's one of the cards that does hurt this deck. You have to spend 3 to drain for 1 at a bunch of systems, which you don't really want to do. So once they put battle order down, you really need to go find your forest and put one of your EPPs there.
Great. Andy, you want to go to the sideboard there real quick?
Yeah, there are other cards that you could potentially swap in if you want. If you don't like these systems and like the Haven thing, you could just go big on drains and go with Coruscant, because that's going to be a drain of 3, and Kifix, that's going to be a drain of 2. So then you'd have Coruscant, Kifix, and Kessel. You're going to push through a lot of damage that way. A different system that's also pretty good is Tibrin. Tibrin is, if you occupy during your control phase, you can exchange 3 cards in hand for any card in your lost pile. So if you really need to, like if your opponent's not battling you too much in space or at all, you don't need all these X-Wings or something. You can throw X-Wings to go get your Obi-Wan or Luke or Boushh or something like that. Like if they keep killing them, to go and like recycle those. But it also lets you go get like random cards that are good. Like you can go back and get your Civil Disorder or your Haven or Order to Engage or something if they canceled it. Non-systems that you would want to possibly play: docking and repair facilities. It's a little expensive. Use 4/4 to deploy on your side of table. Any starship just lost can be placed here. It's basically back to tank for starships. So you can lose your X-Wing, put it onto docking and repair facilities. On your turn, you can use 2 force to pick it up and redeploy it. So it lets you kind of cycle things. Or you can put it, your X-Wing that you picked up, hold it to your opponent's turn, place it on Rebel Fleet to cancel a drain, and then play it off of Rebel Fleet. You can play strike planning as well. This deck's not really going to take any advantage of the twice per game take a general into hand, but it does say opponent generates no force at Endor system. So, you early game, you're probably going to pull Endor first. So it just helps you with controlling what your opponent can do, because one of the ways this deck can get behind is if your opponent can really get ahead of you in force activation and get their ships that they have and get their ships out, and you kind of have a little bit of a tough time coming back if you're already behind. I put in another copy of Hyper Escape. That's just a good card to be able to run away and trigger Order to Engage. And then 1 copy of Gold Leader and Gold 1, just because he can hold a system on his own. He gets the benefit of organized attack, of being immune to attrition and power +1. And in a pinch, you can always throw Luke Skywalker on it as to pilot. It's not amazing, but you already have the other 2 piloted starfighters. So you could just play the 3rd one, and it doesn't really do a whole lot that your other ships aren't already doing anyway. So those are just some alternate options that you could play in this deck, but very strong deck. It's one of the marquee decks of Premier Death Star 2 for light side is Hidden Base X-Wings. And this is probably one of the best versions, if not the best version of the deck.
Cool. Well, Andy, thanks so much for showing everybody how to be very annoying with this. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We'll be back with more deck videos. Feel free to leave suggestions in the comments, and we'll see everybody next time.